and welcome back to Allie Bakes, where I am baking my way through the Cordon Bleu pastry school textbook. Today, we are attempting a black forest gâteau cake. This cake is typically made with booze called Kirschwasser, but today we're going to take some liberties with the recipe and use cherry juice instead. I'm super excited, so let's get started. We're going to start with the actual cake first, so I'm preheating my oven to 335 degrees Fahrenheit, as well as setting up my bain-marie. We're making a genoise sponge, which starts by mixing together eggs and sugar and then heating it slowly over a bain-marie, which is just a water bath on the stove. Apparently, heating up the eggs and sugar allows you to whip more air into them because this cake doesn't use a leavening agent like baking soda. It's just like a meringue cake, basically. Now, as we all know, this book is incredibly vague and does not tell you how long to heat up your egg and sugar mixture on the stove. It just says heat until it thickens. How thick? I don't know. I just kind of had to eyeball it. Now, I didn't want to accidentally caramelize the sugar or cook the eggs, so I took it off the stove before it looked particularly thicker or lighter. So we whip it until it cools down and it forms about medium peaks, and then we had to fold in our dry ingredients, which was cocoa powder, potato starch, and flour. And this almost felt like a little macaronage process like you would do with macarons. Since there's no baking soda or baking powder in this cake, all of your air and lift comes from the air that you beat into your eggs, so you just have to gently fold in the dry stuff and not knock the air out. After I got all the lumps out, this got poured into a pastry ring, which doesn't have a bottom, so it started to kind of splooge out the side, so I just had to hold my breath and stick it in the oven. Now, this supposedly bakes for 30 minutes, but we all know how that goes. I kind of just ended up having to babysit the cake while it was baking. In the meantime, however, I needed to make cherry juice because I couldn't find any at the store. And I didn't want to use Kirsch, which is the liquor that is typically used in this dessert, because I hate nothing more than biting into a sweet dessert and tasting the burn of alcohol. No thank you. So I made my own cherry juice, and it came out okay. Why did they make them without the bottom? Please don't deflate. Please just be cool, okay? Oh, not done, not done, not done. I could hear it. It sounded like it was still wet on the top. That needs like 10 more minutes. What I thought was gonna be 10 minutes actually became 20 minutes because my cake kept sounding like it was still baking until I decided to just pull the chute. Yes, I was right. I was right. My ears deceived me. So, my cake was done, and it was time to let it chill out until the next day. So, it was time to make my imbibing syrup, which is basically simple syrup, just sugar and water cooked over the stove just until it boils, and then you have to leave it to cool down. Now, the recipe told me to make chocolate swirls for the top of the cake, but I was feeling a little ooky spooky Halloween festive, so I decided to make my black forest cake an actual forest by making chocolate trees. So I was melting dark chocolate in the microwave with the hopes of piping it into beautiful little tree decorations onto some parchment paper. It's hot. It's hot. It burned my hands. So this was my first time ever working with chocolate in like a chocolatier fashion. I didn't exactly do it right because I didn't temper the chocolate to make it shiny. This was more of an experiment in how steady I could keep my hand. Oh! Too big! Fuck me! So some of the trees came out okay, and some of them looked more abstract. Feeling a little bit emboldened, I decided to get more creative and make a sheet with my leftover chocolate that I could break into shards to decorate the outside of my cake so it wouldn't look naked. But after that, all the chocolate went into the freezer so I could make my chantilly cream icing, which is basically just cream, powdered sugar, and a little bit of vanilla powder whipped together, and it ended up tasting like Cool Whip. I don't know that I've ever made this before. This is definitely my favorite icing I've ever made. It's not super heavy like buttercream. And after my simple syrup was cool, I added the cherry juice for the soak for my cakes. And then it was time to assemble. So I took my completely cooled cake out of the fridge and cut it into 3 even pieces. It was super lightweight, but also kind of dense. It was hard to describe. It didn't look like there were a lot of air pockets, but it weighed basically nothing. So I put the first slice down, soaked it very slowly in my imbibing syrup because I didn't have a brush, and then goes a layer of chantilly icing, and then you top that with cherries and just kind of rinse and repeat. So, full disclosure, number 1, couldn't find fresh cherries at Walmart. That's whatever, I got the frozen kind. Number 2, I love fresh cherries, like in the summertime when you're spitting out the pits, but I hate cherry flavored stuff. I think it kind of tastes like medicine, so I went really light on the imbibing syrup with the cherry juice in it because I didn't want this to taste like cough syrup. After I got it all assembled, this icing is kind of thin, so I knew I wasn't going to get like an even coating, so I did kind of like a dirty ice around the side, make it look a little rustic. And after it was completely iced, I had to pop it in the fridge for an hour to let it set. This is the kind of icing that I feel like would absolutely disintegrate if it got any kind of warm. So after an hour of chilling, I put my little decorating hat on and started breaking my chocolate pieces into shards to go around the outside. And then I just channeled my inner Pablo Picasso and made a little abstract design out of my chocolate shards, and I thought it looked pretty good. And after that, I hastily put my chocolate trees on top before they melted in my hand because this was not sturdy chocolate at all.
Does it look like a spooky forest?
I thought, on the whole, the cake cleaned up pretty nicely. I thought it looked great.
So this might be the prettiest thing I've ever made. I don't know how it's gonna taste, but it definitely looks pretty awesome. I used to use it myself, except for that one ugly tree who kind of got his head cut off, but just don't look at that. Okay.
I was nervous about a lot of things cutting into this cake. I was worried, A, it was gonna completely fall apart because I'm not a structural engineer. B, the cake was gonna be dry because I didn't know how long to keep it in the oven because it sounded like it was baking, but it really was done baking. C, I was worried that it was gonna taste like medicine because I don't like cherry flavored stuff, so this was something that I really had to take a few bites of to decide if I liked the taste or not.
I think the flavor is good. Either one of two things happened. Either I overbaked the cake because I was so scared of underbaking it, or I didn't flood it with enough syrup. So it's a genoise sponge. So it's supposed to be kind of dry, and that's why it's good to soak up syrups and stuff. I'm wondering if maybe because it doesn't feel like wet at all. I think I just didn't syrup it enough. So that's why it tastes kind of dry. Yeah. And I don't really get any cherry flavor, which leads me to believe I did not use enough cherry syrup. Yeah, it's okay. It's just like chocolate cake with Cool Whip frosting, which I'm all about. I think I was a little bit scared of the syrup. Yeah. I'll give it like a, I don't know, 6 out of 10 wonky Christmas trees.
Regardless of the result, I had a blast making this, and I can't wait to see you guys at the next one.